despite what you might read at the New York Times, is actually the most secure, the hardest platform in the world to manipulate and change. Of course, any technology can be abused. But if you wanted to abuse the technology, if you wanted to use the deep state to unlawfully surveil people, the last platform on the world you would pick is Palantir because of the granular way we segment and put together, and the security models and the access control models that are in Foundry natively, not a built-on addendum.
Alex Karp has just dropped a very feisty interview on CNBC. Check this bad boy out.
And by the way, that focus on civil liberties is making us really rich, which drives the woke, pagan, religious practicing, Neanderthal thinking people who ignore technology absolutely nuts on the right and the left while we're building value. By the way, I asked for permission before I went nuts from our wonderful, slightly conservative and highly substantive partner, and he gave me permission to embarrass him. He didn't realize it'd be this embarrassing.
I think it comes with the territory.
These are my views, not his.
Okay, so Alex, let's get into that. New York Times has an article. Here's the headline. Trump taps Palantir to compile data on Americans. They paint a pretty Orwellian picture of what you and the Trump administration are doing.
I was walking over here. I picked a random engineer, and I said, by the way, we have a contest. Find all the technically absolutely erroneous things in this article in 90 seconds. And I picked a random engineer. I was like, well, how many do you think you could do in 90 seconds? He's like, well, 15, 20. But leaving aside the technical, look, it's probably hard for them, I'm sure. Well, it's not. Well, first of all, on the tech side, it is so ridiculous. I read the New York Times. It's literally like I'm a dyslexic. They might as well be hiring me to do a spelling bee. So, maybe they just have friends who are tech bros, but they can't hire on a meritocratic basis. I don't know. So that's up to them. We have a contest. Find all the errors in 90 seconds. I think somebody will find 50 or 60. But the more important thing is we are not surveilling Americans. We are not building a database to surveil. And if you wanted to do that, the last platform in the world you would buy is Palantir. And don't believe me, spend 10 minutes and look at the architecture of our product. 10 minutes. And then see how ridiculous that is. By the way, writing ridiculous shit in a highly charged environment is dangerous. And the New York Times should take responsibility for the danger they're putting out in the world. There really are people who believe that crap. They believe that.
One thing that's true, though, is that you have increased your contracts with the government, and that has accelerated under the Trump administration.
Of course, but by the way, even there, a mathematically somewhat moderately literate person would say, okay, well, they're increasing the government by 45%. That's pretty baller. How are they increasing in the U.S. commercial? 71%. Are we building a database to conspire against our own people in the U.S. commercial context with no sales force? So we're winning. Yeah, great. You know what? Tell everybody we're winning. We are winning. And by the way, we have a rule of 83 while we do it. Basically means we don't have or have basically inept sales force, and we're winning. And we know why we're winning? Because the product is the best in the world. And you know what the Trump administration is actually doing? Every other government in the world is doing, because everyone wants to beat China, who's not China, is buy the best product. What is the best product? They're not buying our product because they like me or they like my speeches.
Okay, I need to pause here because Karp just demolished one of the biggest criticisms about Palantir in the most direct way possible. Let's address this New York Times surveillance narrative that's been thrown around in the news the past couple of days. Alex Karp is saying if you actually wanted to build a surveillance platform, Palantir would be the worst choice because of how secured and controlled it is. This is huge for understanding Palantir's actual value proposition. Karp is pointing out that their growth in commercial is 71% versus 45% in government. If Palantir was really just a government surveillance tool, why would private companies be adopting it faster than the government are? And here's another key insight. Karp has reminded us that Palantir basically has no sales force and hardly any sales reps, but they're still winning. That tells us the product is so good, it essentially sells itself. So when Alex Karp says people buy it to make their companies more financially strong or more secure or more efficient, that's not their marketing, that's actually how their product performs, and that's why the retention rates are so high. A quick plug from me, and then we'll get back to Alex's interview. I help businesses make more money using YouTube. I helped one law firm make hundreds of thousands of dollars in the first 5 months that we partnered with them. If you own or operate a business, you probably don't realize the opportunity you have on YouTube. If you want to learn more, book a call with me using the link below for more information.
Honestly, he's wondering why he has to buy the product from me too. Buy it because I'm going to make your company really, really financially strong, more secure, more efficient, increase the revenues. Why does the U.S. government buy the product? First of all, it's a product. It's not a waste of time service BS thing that can be abused. By the way, we lost so much revenue in the last 20 years because people wanted to buy things that could be abused. It's really hard to abuse Palantir. You could do services. Who knows what a services company is doing with your data? Or you could do what the New York Times does or consumer internet does. You could resell the data and productize your users. By the way, there's a high correlation between productizing your users and selling them woke pagan BS.
It's a good point. What are you doing at the IRS?
You can't get that with Palantir, but you can't.
The IRS was one example.
Yeah, you know, we have so many contracts in the U.S. government. I mean, I'll tell you, without the specifics, I can tell you exactly what we're doing in the IRS. We're going to use the most secure platform in the world to replace inept software with cheaper, better software that is more efficient. That's what we're doing. I assume at the IRS we have so many contracts. I know that's what we're doing here. That's what we're doing with 71% of growth. You know what we're doing in the DoD? We're scaring the bejeebers, I'm trying not to use the F word, out of our adversaries by making them scared at night. And you know how we're doing it? By installing productized software that runs algorithms against data that's been lawfully collected. And you can't unlawfully use it in our platform, which is one of the main reasons people buy it and keep it.
All right, Chris, we know you haven't been rendered mute, so I'm going to come to you and ask you on, healthcare. Listen, we're having a huge debate right now in this country, obviously, about spending and about deficits that are unsustainable. Healthcare seems to be at the center of so much of our spending. We spend more than any country, yet we don't get outcomes that seem anywhere near what we should. How do you see that being transformed, and can it be, given some of the larger efforts you're making here in terms of when you talk about the AI revolution in healthcare?
Yeah, absolutely, and this is the reason that we're partnering with Palantir. You know, Teletrack has been in this for 3 decades, focused on the operations. When you talk about the macroeconomic issues, we're at 20% and growing in GDP spend as part of healthcare. We're ranked 48th or 49th, depending on the study you look at, in efficiency in that healthcare. So our mission and our shared mission in this is to bend the cost curve of healthcare down while improving access and quality of care. And we're doing that through improving the operations, small transactions, small things. Everyone's experienced the wait times in healthcare. Everyone's experienced the unknowns in healthcare. And so we have more capability that we have built over the years that it's now going to be augmented with our partnership using Foundry and AIP and the expertise that Palantir brings, coupled with our deep domain knowledge. We can drive the cost of healthcare down.
Medicaid, Medicare spending, obviously a key portion of our spending overall. I mean, is it your overall belief that over time, given AI and what it can accomplish, that we can meaningfully reduce spending while actually improving outcomes?
Absolutely, 100%. And I think what we've seen microeconomic versions of this across hospitals. Roughly half, 45% of hospitals cannot make money inside the Medicare and Medicaid margins, but some do. The ones that do have focus on the operation side of their business, just like in every other industry. Efficiency and productivity improves outcomes.
Alex, while we're on sort of bigger picture issues, the big beautiful bill, I wanted to ask you about this, has a provision that bans states and localities from regulating AI for a decade. Is that a good idea?
Look, I mean, I'm busy in building what I believe will be the largest and is, I think, already maybe the most important software business in the world. And so I'm not really reading bills. My general bias on AI is it is dangerous. There are positive and negative consequences, and either we win or China will win. So a lot of stuff that would be really important to look at, we're in an arms race. And by the way, I don't even mean an arms race, just the obvious, like our AI on the battlefield is better than theirs, or the world order will change, which I think almost everyone intuitively understands. It's also how do we have the strongest economy in the world? And again, we have, when you're building a business, you really have to build where you're strong. So like we focus on software, we focus on technology. as alluding to the early part of the conversation, when you veer from that, you end up with weird, non-performant products like the New York Times article. But if you stick to where we have strength, which is essentially business acumen, business knowledge, domain-specific ways of doing things, and then using software to hypercharge the efficiencies. Now, why would we do that? Well, as a matter of theory, you would think, well, we'll do it just because we can, but we also do it because we're the best in the world at it. There is no economy in the world with this kind of corporate leadership, which is willing to pivot, which understands technologies, which is willing to look at new things, but also has deep domain expertise. Our allies in the West, in Europe, are going to have to learn from us. Our allies in the Middle East are learning quicker from us.
This part right here is why Palantir's positioning is so powerful. Karp is framing this as an arms race, whether either the US wins or China wins, and he's absolutely right. What I love about Alex Karp's approach here is he's not just talking about military applications. He's saying America has every advantage in its field. The best companies to buy from, the best customers to sell to, the most flexible and adaptive companies, and the best talent. Palantir is positioned right at the center of all of these advantages. When Karp talks about focusing on where America is strong, albeit business acumen, domain expertise, and using software to hypercharge efficiencies, that's literally Palantir's business model. They take their deep understanding of how organizations actually work and use software to make them dramatically more efficient.
Our adversaries are trying to learn from us, and we're not, you can't look at this in a vacuum. One of the biggest mistakes that people are making is, people have become economically literate. So you wouldn't write an article saying you could just borrow money endlessly, but you could write an article that's just as stupid on technology, and tech gets a say here. And America has every advantage in this field, like every advantage. Every company you'd want to buy from, not just us, others, great companies, every company you'd want to sell to, every company that's selling to customers, that's flexible and adopt. We get the best people. You have to focus on that, and anything slowing us down is just essentially a transfer of IP to our
you called it
allies,
dangerous.
and we will pay a huge price for that. Huh?
So how do we mitigate? You just called it dangerous. So how do we mitigate the risk, catastrophic risk, while also beating China?
No, sorry. Anything powerful is dangerous, right? So it's like you can't say AI is just going to be unmitigated good or bad. Well, I'll tell you what. We have honest discussions about tracking where it's going, how close are we to AGI, what is working, who are the people doing it. I welcome a discussion about who is in charge of these technologies. Great. You have people on the left and increasingly on the right who just think I'm a shaman person gathering money and data. Magically, we just show up. It just happens. It just happens. Yeah, it just happens. Yeah, just magically. We've got to fight against that. We've got to educate our populace. We've got to focus on meritocracy. We've got to allow a culture where the best products can win and they stay profitable. And we have to fight for that. And by the way, everyone who's on the sidelines and thinks you can get away with not fighting for these things, with honest discussions, is going to find out the other side, which is Luddite, regressive, pagan, they will win. And that's what we have to do. And then quantify the results.
What we just heard from Alex Karp is exactly why Palantir isn't just another tech company. They're building what he calls the most important software business in the world. And honestly, after hearing this, I think he might be right. Alex Karp addressed every major criticism head on. Surveillance concerns, their platform is actually the hardest to abuse. Government dependence, they're actually growing faster in commercial. A sales-heavy business model, they barely have a sales force because the product sells itself. But the most important thing Karp said is about the competitive landscape. This isn't just about building good software, it's about whether America maintains technological leadership or loses it to China. When Karp says anything that slows down America is essentially a transfer of IP to China, he's explaining why Palantir's mission is so critical. The healthcare partnership, for example, shows how this plays out in practice. Palantir is not just building AI tools, they're using AI to bend the cost curve of healthcare down while improving outcomes. That's the kind of real-world impact that justifies, in my opinion, Palantir's valuation and also explains their growth trajectory. Alex Karp's message is clear. Focus on meritocracy, let the best products win, and fight for American technological superiority. And based from what I've seen from Palantir and heard from Alex Karp, Palantir is doing exactly that.